So our first Christmas with our kids, they were just in the mood, the Christmas spirit, but it wasn't the good kind of Christmas spirit. It's the kind that overwhelms small children and makes them cry a lot. If you have children, you know the kind of Christmas spirit I'm talking about. And so Kylie was 4, she was little, and I remember her one day as we're getting close to Christmas, just so much Christmas spirit overwhelmed her that she was laying on the floor crying. And Beth came up to her and was trying to figure out what was wrong, and I don't know what was wrong, but I remember Beth saying to her, "Kylie, do you want to have lunch or do you want to keep crying?" And Kylie said, "I want to keep crying." And that's what she did for a while, you know? Now, I think if the option is I'm going to have lunch or I'm going to keep crying, I would choose have lunch. But that's not the place that she was at that moment in her life. I think if the question that was presented to me was, do you want to be made well, or do you want to continue to stay where you're at? I want the answer to be, I want to be made well, right? And that's the question that we hear today. We hear this question that Jesus poses to this man as he sits beside a pool waiting for some kind of healing. Do you want to be made well? And we think the answer should be yes. Yes, yes, yes. The man should say, absolutely, yes. But that's not what happens, is it? Because when Jesus asks a question, the question has a tendency to go beyond our place of regular understanding to something much deeper. When Jesus asks a question, it goes beyond the surface, it goes beyond the regular answers, and begins to strike deep into someone's heart and reveal something and work something and change something in us. The questions that God asks us are powerful because they are transformative for us. And that's what we see in this text. This man has been laying beside the pool at Bethzatha for 38 years. Now, the archaeologists have found this pool. It was there in Jerusalem. It had these 5 porticos. It was plumbed in. There was water that was fed probably from a stream into this pool. And people would gather there because of this superstition or this idea, this hope, this thought that maybe if they were the first to get into the pool, they could be healed. They believed that somehow angels would come on occasion and stir the pool. And I don't know how that happened. I don't know whether water bubbled up from the pipes, or I don't know what the situation was. But in these moments when an angel would come stir the pool, the first one in would experience healing. So people would come and they would sit and gather and wait and watch and wait and watch, day after day after day after day after day, waiting for this moment when the pool might begin to bubble and an angel might show up. The man who we meet today has waited 38 years. 38 years of coming every day to the pool to watch and wait and watch and wait and hope that the pool might bubble. What do you think it felt like to walk into that pool? You see, as I think about that place and as I try to envision it and feel it, I feel this sense of desperation. Because you wouldn't come to a pool every day that may or may not work, where an angel may or may not show up, where there may or may not be some miraculous power, if you weren't deeply desperate for something, would you? People show up day after day after day with this sense of despair and desperation, longing, waiting, hoping against all hope that somehow the stories they've heard about this place just might be true, even if they've never seen it for themselves. I sense this sense of hopelessness, a sense of fear and uncertainty, a sense of anxiety and unknown as people come hurting and broken, watching the pool because maybe this will be the moment. Have you ever felt that kind of despair? Have you ever felt that kind of desperation? Have you ever felt that kind of uncertainty or fear where you don't know where to turn? So you do the best you can, but the hope isn't great? Jesus walks in. Jesus walks in. And when Jesus shows up places, things change, don't they? When Jesus shows up in even the most hopeless situations, hope begins to become a reality. When Jesus shows up in the places where people are broken and hurting, there is healing and life. When Jesus shows up in the places where there is uncertainty and fear, there becomes peace and connection. That's the work that Jesus does. Jesus walks into a place of deep desperation and despair and does something powerful. Now, church, hear me. If we are going to be people who follow Jesus, if we're going to be people that live like Jesus, we need to be going to places where there is this despair and desperation. If we are going to be people that follow Jesus and live like Jesus, we need to be people who embody Jesus' hope in the places where there is desperation and uncertainty, in the places of anxiety and fear, because there are places all over our world, there are places all over our nation, there are places all over our very community where you can feel the desperation, where you can feel the uncertainty, where you can feel the fear. There are places where people are living with anxiety and unknown, and they are longing for some kind of hope, and that hope, my friends, is Jesus. And we are called to be people who walk into places of uncertainty and fear and anxiety and despair and boldly offer Jesus. It's not easy. It's not easy. It makes us feel uncomfortable. We feel like we don't have anything to say. We're not sure what to do when someone comes to us with that sense of brokenness or loss. Here's what you do. You give them Jesus, because Jesus offers hope, because Jesus offers life. I wonder, too, how often we are the ones sitting next to the pool, longing to experience some kind of hope, longing to experience some kind of healing, hoping against all hope that the stories we've heard could be true, and because we are so preoccupied and watching for the bubbles, we miss out on Jesus. You realize that happens, right? All the people are gathered around the pool, and they're just staring. They're watching. Jesus, who's been doing some miracles, walks among them, and nobody seems to notice because they've been too distracted by the thing that might happen. They miss out on the one who embodies hope, longing for some kind of superstitious hope from some bubbly water. In the moments in life where you are experiencing despair and brokenness and uncertainty, in the moments of life where you are experiencing pain and unknown, where do you turn? Where do you turn? What's the thing that takes your attention? What's the thing that you put your hope in? Because the place that we need, the place that we long for, the thing that we're looking for is going to be found in Jesus. So Jesus walks in. And in the text, he just walks up to this guy, kind of out of nowhere, and says, "Do you want to be made well?" Now, this feels a little jarring to me, right? There's been no conversation. They've not had a talk. Jesus doesn't seem to know the guy's name. He just, boom, "Do you want to be made well?" It feels abrupt. It really does. I remember this one time when Beth and I, we were newlyweds, and we had been married just a couple weeks. We had gone to Walmart to do some shopping. We were in the home goods section of Walmart, like buying Tupperware or something, and this guy walks up to us and starts asking us all these bizarre questions. It was jarring. I eventually figured out he wanted to sell us Amway. That's what he was doing, and he was like hunting for young couples in Walmart in the Tupperware section to try and sell them Amway, and that's what he was going for, right? But I remember him asking me these questions, being like, "What is happening?" And I have to kind of guess that maybe that's what happens to this man. As he's laying there, minding his own business, and out of nowhere, this guy comes up and says, "Do you want to be made well?" I wish we could hear Jesus' tone of voice. Like, I wish that there were stage notes in the Bible that says, like, Jesus says condemningly, or Jesus says sarcastically, or whatever. It doesn't say that, though. Because sometimes I think we hear things and we're not sure how to read it. And so sometimes I think we hear Jesus walk up to this guy and say, "Do you want to be made well?" And the guy immediately gets defensive. At least that's how I read it. And he starts to make excuses. "Well, I do, but I can't get in the pool because I have no one to carry me. And if you don't get there first, you don't make it." In fact, all the commentaries I read over the last couple of weeks talk about the way this guy makes excuses. But it doesn't sit right with me. Here's the thing, it doesn't sit right with me, because the Jesus that I know is not a Jesus who is abrupt or jarring or condemning or questioning. The Jesus that I know is compassionate and gracious. And so maybe, stick with me, maybe when Jesus walks up to this man who no one has noticed for 38 years, who has sat by the pool waiting for some healing that he hasn't gotten, maybe Jesus' question to him is not one that's jarring and abrupt. Maybe Jesus is compassionate and gracious, and maybe, just maybe, for the first time, this man realizes that he's been seen. Maybe somebody that's been ignored over and over again realizes that he's been seen, realizes that he matters to Jesus, and that ability to experience compassion and grace draws him from a place of denial to a place of new life. And his answer to Jesus is not an excuse, but this deep realization that the thing that he's been trying over and over and over and over again just isn't gonna work. Maybe it's the first time this man gets real about the fact that he's never gonna make it into the pool. Denial is a powerful thing. Denial is where we say we can handle it, we can do it, we can take care of it. Denial is where we say that nothing is really wrong, and that maybe if I just keep doing the same things over and over again, I'm going to get a different result. At Celebrate Recovery, we say that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and looking for a different result. We don't want to make decisions based on insanity. We want to make decisions based on the truth, right? So what Jesus is doing to this guy is gently pulling him from a place of denial, where he says the things that you've done, the life that you've lived, the steps that you've taken, they're not going to cut it. The thing that you've hoped for, that you're going to somehow be the first one to get into this pool that doesn't actually work, it's not going to cut it. And maybe this moment where this man answers Jesus is the first time that he's ever stepped out of denial. If we can step out of denial, if we could acknowledge the fact that the ways we're doing things and the life that we've lived isn't going to cut it for us, that's when we find hope and peace. In what ways are you living in denial today? In what ways are you living in denial, saying, I think I can handle it. I think I can do it. I think I can make it. Or all the things that have happened to me, they're normal. This is a normal life. What are the ways that you're living in denial? What are the hurts and the habits, the hang-ups? What's the brokenness that you carry that you've continued to say, it's okay. It's okay. I just need to get in the pool. It's fine. But what you've really been doing is living in denial. You are unwilling to be made well because you're going to hold on to your own stuff. The first step to being made well is to say, I can't do this on my own. I can't do this on my own. My kids have reached the stage in life where they want to do things on their own, which is great and also annoying. So there's these moments where they will, they'll be trying to open the yogurt. And I'll be like, you need me to open the yogurt? And they're like, no. Okay, all right, I'm here, right? And then you wait a couple minutes and you're like, hey, do you need me to open that yogurt? No. Okay, great. And I finally say to them, listen, when you're ready, I'll open the yogurt. Just let me know when you get to that point, right? And a couple minutes later, they come and they hand me the yogurt, and I open the yogurt because I'm a top-notch opener. I'm really good at opening things. I think Jesus says, when you're ready to realize you can't do this on your own, when you're ready to realize that you're not going to be made well under your own power, when you're ready to realize that the things that you've done over and over and over again aren't working, I'm here. And I can make you well. It calls for a drastic change in the man's life. I mean, everything the man knows has to shift because he's been coming to the pool every day to try and get in the water. And if he's going to be made well, everything's going to be different. He's not going to have to do that anymore. He's going to have to find new relationships and new perspectives. He's going to have to find new things to do with his life. Everything's going to be different for him. And sometimes that change, while it is good, is scary. And he says, I'd rather stay here in my own little place of discomfort, knowing what I know and living my life with an unwillingness to be made well. Jesus invites us to this deep kind of freedom, a freedom that changes everything about us, a freedom that is unknown and sometimes seems scary, except for the fact that Jesus is there, right? Jesus invites us to step beyond our perspectives, to step beyond the experiences that we have, to step beyond a place of comfort that we have grown accustomed to into a new life. And that's what Jesus does for this man. He looks at him and says, take up your mat and walk. And this is a stunning thing to say. It doesn't make any sense because for 38 years, the guy hasn't been able to do that, right? This is a ridiculous statement that Jesus makes. And it's not based in anything. It's not like the guy has professed his faith or has said that Jesus can make him well or believes or understands anything about Jesus. You know what? It doesn't have anything to do with the guy. It has everything to do with Jesus because Jesus wants to offer freedom and healing. Get that. Jesus wants to offer us all freedom and healing. That's the work that Jesus does. It is in the very DNA of who Jesus is to offer freedom and healing, to offer hope and life in hopeless and difficult situations. Jesus came to bring the dead to life. That's what Jesus is about. And even though the guy doesn't do anything to deserve it, Jesus looks at him and says, take your mat and walk. If Jesus said that to me and I've been laying on the ground for 38 years, I would have said, okay, sure, great. And I would have continued to lay there, right? I mean, what would have happened if Jesus looked at the guy and said, take your mat and walk, and the guy could have, but he didn't because he didn't think he could? Or he was not willing to be obedient? You see, here's the powerful thing about getting well. We can't do it on our own. We can't. We have nothing to do with it. We need Jesus' power in finding wellness and wholeness. We need Jesus' power in overcoming addiction and brokenness and pain. We can't do it. But if we don't take the steps, we'll continue to lay there. There is this paradox that says we can't do it on our own, but we sure have a responsibility in the midst of it. The guy has to be obedient to stand up, to take his mat, and to take the step, even when it seems ridiculous and difficult. I tell you what, on Wednesday nights, I get to hear these testimonies, these stories of people who have experienced God's wellness and healing in their lives. I hear incredible stories of people who bear witness to the ways that God has worked in their life to overcome anger and addiction and anxiety and fear, selfishness and greed. I hear these amazing stories of this. None of it just happens. It's not like people just wake up one day and they're like, hey, I'm better. Like, that's not the way it works. It works that somebody says, I can't do this on my own, but I'm going to be willing to take the steps, to work the steps and get to a place of healing. Miracles happen when we join our lives with Jesus and are obedient to do what Jesus says. So if you want to find some healing, if you want to be made well, if you want to experience new life, you can't just say, I'm waiting for a miracle. You have to be willing to do the work, to take the steps, to follow Jesus, knowing that Jesus calls us there. So he does. He picks up his mat and he begins to walk. And there is like a commotion and a chaos that unfolds, and Jesus kind of sneaks out. That would be the end of it, except that Jesus healed him on the Sabbath, which is a big no-no. And I love that about Jesus. It's not like it's enough that Jesus heals this guy, and it's not enough that Jesus gives this guy new life, and it's not enough that he is restored to wellness. That's the question. By the way, Jesus doesn't say, do you want to be healed or do you want to walk? He says, do you want to be made well? And the Greek word for well is actually this kind of complete, holistic idea of being well, of being restored and reconciled into community, of being redeemed, of finding new life. That's what Jesus offers him, and it is powerful. Jesus does this great work, and that's not enough. Jesus does it on the Sabbath because Jesus doesn't care about the rules. Do you hear that? Jesus doesn't care about the rules. Jesus doesn't care that he's not supposed to do it on the Sabbath. Jesus doesn't care that he should come back the next day. Jesus cares about people first. People. Jesus cares about people first, and the rules don't really matter. And so if that's somebody that needs healing and it's the Sabbath, he's going to do it. If it's somebody that needs life and it's the Sabbath, Jesus is still going to do it, because what Jesus cares about deeply and passionately is that people are set free, is that people experience life and freedom, is that people experience redemption. And if the Kairos moment, if the right moment for redemption is on the Sabbath, it's going to come anyway. Church, may we have deep in our bones a passion for people who need to know Jesus' healing. May we have deep in our bones a call to go to places where people are desperate and uncertain and afraid. May we have deep in our bones a willingness to follow Jesus, even if it seems ridiculous and outrageous and surprising, because in that we will find and offer wholeness and wellness and life. Do you want to be made well? Are you willing to stop doing things on your own? Will you step out of denial into God's glorious light? This is the work that Jesus does.